Hi, my name is Angie DeGeorge, and I am doing my community presentation on Anchorage, Alaska, where I currently live. I will have a guest speaker here. My husband, Chris, will also be partaking. The name Alaska was introduced in the Russian colonial period when it was used to refer to the peninsula. The slide above shows the progression of Alaska, and in 1939 is when Anchorage was formed with the influx of 300,000 military personnel and $3 billion spent in facilities to grow Anchorage. And then in the 1970s, it expanded further by the entrance of the oil industry.
Alaska is the largest state in the United States with a total area of over 600,000 square miles. As you can see from the map with the blue star, Alaska itself has twice the land size of Texas, but the area and distance it covers is massive, from almost one corner of the United States to the other. Consider the impact this has when delivering health care. Picture being the care provider for people from Florida to California to Minnesota. Think about what this means for the customer needing services, whether chronically or acutely. For the purposes of this presentation, I will refer often to the state of Alaska versus the city of Anchorage. It is necessary to understand the barriers that most of Alaska has to services and look to Anchorage to provide those services. Healthcare, transportation, shipping, delivery of food, and employment are primarily centered in Anchorage, a city that is 1,963 square miles, just twice the size of Pinellas County. Anchorage is bordered by the Chugach Mountains on the east side of the city and Cook Inlet and Turnagain Arm waterways to the north, south, and west boundaries. Anchorage is currently landlocked for developing due to the land surrounding it, which is national forests. This makes the cost of land very valuable, and on a later slide I will discuss the impact that this has on the community. Anchorage is the largest city in Alaska with a population of almost 300,000 in 2016. Anchorage has most of the modern conveniences that a typical city of equal size does in the lower 48. It is westernized and traditional, and unlike a majority of the state. In rural Alaska, jobs are scarce and the cost of groceries can be prohibitive. Hunting and fishing are an essential means of getting food on the table for most. Paying for food for a family of 4 in villages can cost 75% more than in Anchorage, according to a survey by the Alaska Cooperative Extension. With this in mind, Anchorage is the launching point for most industry and commerce in Alaska. Those that live in rural areas that can travel by land into Anchorage do so on a limited basis to stock up on supplies. On weekends, you can readily see evidence of this at the big box stores, with common people stocking up on huge quantities of supplies. For those that are not able to reach Anchorage by roads, they have to rely on trains, boats, or bush plane for their needed supplies, which is very costly and takes a great deal of advanced planning and preparation.
A variety of modes of transportation are vital to the success of the city of Anchorage and the state. Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport plays an integral role in the moving of goods and services and infrastructure. It also provides 1 in 10 jobs in Alaska. Anchorage is home to the world's largest and busiest floatplane base. There's 8 military bases in Alaska, but Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, or J-Bear, is home to 42,000 military citizens and accounts for 10% of the population in Anchorage. The Alaska Railroad runs 500 miles, and it carries both freight and passengers through its system. It connects with 3 rail barges that further connect to the local port. The the Alaska Marine Highway System operates an integral part of the state highway infrastructure, transporting people and vehicles to the coastal communities on a year-round basis. As we said, the transportation and shipping industry is by far the largest employer in Anchorage, but the healthcare and retail employers take up next in line. Majority of the housing is multifamily due to the limited availability of vacant land. Yards are limited and shared, and the average cost of a single-family home is about $556,000. We have a public transportation system in Anchorage, and upon my windshield survey, it seemed like the underserved population were a majority of the consumers. We have Uber and Lynx available, as well as a taxi service. Alaska Native provides a bus service for the people seeking care at their facility. As a consumer, I find all of my needs met within the city. Population density in Anchorage is far higher than it is in the rest of the state. The population in Anchorage is about 152 people per square mile, where the entire state has about 1.2 people per square mile. There's a significant population surge in the summer and through tourists and seasonal workers. The population is younger, with just under 10% over the age of 65. 49% of the population is female, and that is consistent with the state. Caucasians make up a majority of the population in Anchorage at 65%. In rural Alaska, the native population comprised 16% of the population. More residents are on welfare per capita than any other state, and 6.7% receive government assistance. Housing or homelessness is high in Anchorage, with a 100% increase from 2016 to 2017. Healthcare in Alaska is unique due to the fact that Anchorage houses the only full-service facility in the state. Therefore, it bears the burden for a large portion of healthcare needs statewide. There are small regional hospitals, tertiary centers, clinics, and remote villages with community health care workers. But services are limited, therefore most travel to Anchorage for their care. We have pretty much three different systems here: the private sector, the military veteran affairs, and the Alaska tribal system. The government and tribal system represent a larger portion of the facilities. 20% of the population are covered under the tribal, 12% under the military system. There's 8 hospitals in Anchorage. There's approximately 550 community health workers out in the 170 rural Alaskan villages. And Alaska is the 4th most expensive state in the U.S., where a standard knee replacement may cost 5 times what it does in Seattle. And we had a 40% increase after the initiation of the ACA. And as stated earlier, the additional cost of having to travel thousands of miles to stay for your care. The cost of housing in Anchorage is a barrier here, as well as the tourists and healthcare tourists competing for the same temporary housing. According to Healthy People 2020, I feel the Alaska priorities are access to health service, the mental health and mental disorders, and maternal, infant, and child health. And I think as we have talked throughout this entire presentation, you can understand why there is limited access here to healthcare services, about the abundance of the mental health, mental disorders, and about the need for maternal child health, and the lack of services that they're able to receive, also playing in the amount of domestic violence on women and children here in the state. Anchorage and Alaska statewide have many of the similar diseases as those in the rest of North America. Cancer, heart disease, diabetes, respiratory disease are all the top leaders. Liver disease is prevalent due to the high rates of alcoholism throughout Alaska, particularly the native population. What is significantly different, though, is the leading cause of death rates are significantly higher, for accidents and suicide being almost 3 times the national average. Behaviors and pastimes in Anchorage. The smoking rates are 21%, obesity rates are 67%, both of them highest among the native population. Now, with all the bad that we've talked about, the outdoors here is spectacular. Outdoor activities are popular with thousands of miles of trails in and around Anchorage. People walk and bike year-round to work. We have recreation centers, outdoor centers, over 600 trails in Anchorage, and you can find pretty much any outdoor activity imaginable available. The emergency services here in Anchorage are pretty taxed. Both the police, fire department, and EMS are all kept quite busy. LifeMed and LifeFlight are the two transport companies to bring people in and out from rural parts. Our major disasters are earthquakes, avalanches, winter extremes, and wildfires. You can receive emergency preparedness information on the Anchorage municipality's website. The above slide shows the government structure of the state of Alaska, and on the right-hand side it shows the economics and the income and expenses for the state. The current areas of concern are, just as we've talked about with the domestic issues, the lack of police being available. One thing I want to touch on is there is legalization of recreational marijuana here. It's been legal for a very long time, and as a citizen I don't really see any impact with that legalization, and as a healthcare provider I don't really see an increased prevalence other than people at least admitting to the usage of it. Prioritizing the needs of this community is almost impossible, but it pretty much revolves around everything that we've talked about in helping bring services here. Mental health services would be the top priority, focusing on substance abuse, suicide prevention, expansion of shelters and services for the homeless, include places for women and children to find support and safety. As an employer, attendance rates are very poor due to domestic problems at the home. And the women are the predominant earners in the family. More transition programs for affordable housing and childcare, job training, possibly language and communication classes so they can be successful in a job interview. Increased telehealth to help our access to care. Family planning with some long-term contraceptive use, and then crime and violence is escalating, so additional expansion of our police department. So those would be my priorities. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation of Alaska, and for more information you can certainly reach out to me. Thank you.